welcome to the July 8th, 2025 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council. City Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Here.
Flom.
Here.
Bulow.
Here.
Stevenson.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Mughawar.
Here.
We have 7 present.
Leading us in the invocation tonight, as well as the Pledge of Allegiance, will be Councilmember Spanbauer.
As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to this city. May our decisions always be ones that are for the well-being of all whom we govern.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have just a few public hearings at the front end of the meeting tonight before we move into statements to council and our normal consent agenda. Just for a little bit of fidelity, in the past, our practice has been to read these 3 times. That practice is going to be altered tonight going forward. So we'll be reading the public hearings 1 time each, closing the public hearing, and then moving on to a vote on the resolution. So moving on, here we have Resolution 25-355. This is a public hearing to approve final resolution for special assessments for Contract 25-02 sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer main and laterals, new and relay. If there's anyone here to speak on this public hearing, now will be the time to step forward. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed, and I'll take a motion in a second on the resolution.
So moved. Second.
When the city clerk, any discussion on the resolution? When you're ready, if you'll take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-356, this is a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for Contract 25-04, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main and laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer mains and lateral, new and relay. If you're here to speak on this public hearing, now would be the time to come forward. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed and take a motion and a second on the resolution.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Sorry. Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-357, a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for Contract 25-05, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main and laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals, new and relay. If you're here for this public hearing, now would be the time to come forward. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed, and I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-358, this is a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for Contract 25-07, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main and laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals, new and relay. If you're here to speak on this for the public hearing, now would be the time to come forward. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Please take the roll on 25-358.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-359, a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for contract 25-08, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals new and relay, water main and laterals new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals new and relay. Now would be the time to come forward to speak during this public hearing. Seeing none, consider the public hearing closed, and I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-360, this is a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for contract 25-09, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals new and relay, water main and laterals new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals new and relay. If you're here for this public hearing, please come forward now. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed, and I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Please take the roll on 25-360.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-361. This is a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for contract 25-12, sanitary sewer laterals, new and relay, and water main laterals, new and relay. If you're here for this public hearing, now would be the time to come forward. Seeing none, we'll consider the public hearing closed and take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Final public hearing, Resolution 25-362, a public hearing regarding the approval of final resolution for special assessments for contract 25-20, storm sewer laterals, new and relay. If you're here for this public hearing, now would be the time to come forward. I see no one. We'll consider the public hearing closed, and I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. City Clerk, if you'll please take the roll on 25-362.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
That concludes the public hearings for this evening. We'll move on to public statements to council. I have Laura Crichton. You'd be up first for public statements. Welcome. Right here, if you could. Sure, if you want to hand it up here, we'll take care of dispersing it.
Do you have 8 for us? Do you have 8?
Perfect.
Okay.
Welcome. Just a reminder, statements are limited to 5 minutes and then must be on something that's under our purview and not on tonight's agenda.
Yes.
2 pages.
Hi.
Go ahead.
My name is Laura Crichton. I live on Tyler Avenue here in Oshkosh. And to be honest, I had hoped somebody else would step up here and ask these questions that I feel like need to be answered. Oshkosh sits inside the 100-mile border zone where federal agencies claim expanded powers of surveillance, detention, and enforcement. Powers that require no warrants, no transparency, and no community consent. As we watch the rule of law being bent and broken at the highest levels of government, we cannot assume that the protections we previously relied on will hold. When the foundations crack at the top, it becomes the responsibility of local government to step in, to fill the gaps, to draw clear boundaries, and to protect where higher systems are failing, including the most basic legal protection there is, the right not to be detained without cause, without identification, without recourse. Habeas corpus isn't a technicality. It's one of the oldest principles in any democracy. The primary safeguard against disappearance by the state. You are the firewall. This is the place where laws get made to protect our residents when larger systems fail. I I come to this council with both respect and urgency to ask, when federal agencies like ICE enter our city, operating without warrants, unmarked, unidentified, and as outside agents, what is the role of our local police? Who do they serve? Who will they protect? And who do they answer to? ICE agents do not come to serve this community. They have built no trust, and they come to undermine the trust established within our community. I am urging you to ensure the trust between our police department and our residents is protected, and not quietly eroded by participating in operations the public never requested or consented to. July 4th, 1925, exactly 100 years ago this week, Oshkosh hosted a Klan convocation. 15 to 20,000 people gathered in these streets under the banner of white supremacy. It wasn't secret. It wasn't hidden. It was out in the open. Charles Hart, the vice mayor at the time, delivered the welcoming address. Here we are, a century later. The same seeds of fear take root. The oppressors now wear masks to conceal their face instead of hoods. But the purpose is the same: to terrorize, to disappear people, to fracture communities, and to remind anyone deemed other that safety is conditional. When federal agents operate without warrants, without identification, and without accountability, trust is replaced by fear. This is how power enforces supremacy in the modern era. It's not subtle, it's not accidental, and it is not new. Oshkosh also has a long and more modern history of welcoming refugees. Hmong families fleeing genocide, Syrians escaping civil war, Afghans after the U.S. withdrawal, Congolese families fleeing brutal conflict. The city has made a public commitment to be a place where people can rebuild their lives free from fear. These are two parts of the city's history, and the question is whether we have the will and the foresight to dismantle the undercurrent of harm and replace it with something built on safety, dignity, and real accountability. There is no federal law that requires local police to assist ICE. Cooperation is entirely voluntary, and if it is a choice, then it is this city's responsibility to make that choice, transparently, proactively, and with the input of people who actually live here. We have the responsibility to be proactive, not reactive, to draw clear lines now before harm is done. The Winnebago County Sheriff's Department have already signed a 287G MOA WSO agreement with ICE. So I'm asking this council directly, is there a policy? Is there a line? And if not, will you commit to creating one? Will you commit to ensuring that none of the city's resources, no tax dollars, no personnel, no cooperation, are used to support any operation that undermines due process, habeas corpus, or the fundamental rights of the people who live here? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. William Kitts. Where is William? You had registered to speak under the Learning Collaborative?
He's not hearing you. He didn't hear you.
William? So you're here for the Learning Collaborative?
Yes.
Are you going to like give us an update regarding the ARPA? Okay.
You wanted to wait till the ARPA.
It's in an interesting spot because it's actually under the city manager's announcements and statements at the very end. No, feel free to, why don't you give us your update
We're gonna wait anyway, listen to it.
if you'd like to. Okay. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. If there's anyone else that would like to speak, make public statements to council, now would be the time. Otherwise, we'll move right into consent. We'll move on to consent. I have no one registered to speak on any consent-related items, so I'll take a motion and a second on consent resolutions.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I see none. If you'll take the roll on consent.
Spanbauer,
Aye.
Flom,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Mughawar,
Aye.
carried 7.
We have, looks like 5 pending ordinances that we'll be taking on action this evening. Ordinance 25-386, approving approve zone change from heavy industrial district to heavy industrial district with a planned development overlay at 3200 North Main Street, and Plan Commission recommends approval. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion from council? Mr. Bulow?
I'm just going to say a quick thank you to staff. This project had a lot of complicated different directions and hurdles to overcome, and they worked with the applicant well, and I just wanted to appreciate that.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, take the roll on 25386.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 25-387, authorize public construction for Lake Butamore Development, Phase 2, 2000 block of Olivia Road and 3500 block of Blair Boulevard. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I don't see any. Please take the roll when you're ready.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 25-388, establish street grades, Lake Butamore Development, Phase 2, 2000 block of Olivia Road and 3500 block of Blair Boulevard. Take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll on 25-388.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Two more. We've got ordinance 25-389, amends section 27A-11 of the municipal code pertaining to parking regulations on Eagle Street. Take a motion in a second.
So
please.
moved. Second.
Any discussion? I see none. Please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Final pending ordinance, ordinance 25-390. This is to cancel the July 22nd, 2025 and December 23rd, 2025 council meetings. Surprisingly, I have no one registered to speak on this, and
So moved.
I will take a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Just for a little bit of clarity, the July one happens to be EAA week, and we lack a quorum from council members to even hold a council meeting, and December 23rd hopefully is evident. It's just the holiday week, and we don't generally hold a meeting that week, so if you'll take the roll on 25-390.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Moving right along, we've got a few new resolutions. Resolution 25-391, approve issuance of combination Class B beer liquor license to Team SNW LLC. This is the Truffle Pig, 224 State Street. I have no one registered to speak. I'll take a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I see none. Please take the roll.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25-392, this is to terminate ambulance service agreement with the towns of Algoma, Black Wolf, Nakaimai, Omro, Poygan, Rushford, Utica, and Winnicott, villages of Winnicott, and city of Omro. Authorize staff to negotiate with the towns of Algoma, Black Wolf, and Nakaimai for ambulance service agreements for 2026, and direct and authorize staff to explore options for fire and EMS services for 2027 and future years. I have no one registered to speak on this. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion from council? I see none. If you'll take the roll on 25-392.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 25393, approve a resolution requesting legislative authorization for a municipal sales tax in cities located in counties without an adopted county sales tax. I do have one registered person for this discussion topic, Mr. John Hintz. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Hins, 137 Brockway Avenue, City of Oshkosh. I also am the County Board Supervisor for District 21, which is the far southeast corner of the City of Oshkosh, basically from Fort to the lake, and a little bit more to the north of that, but we don't need to get into all those details with those districts. I'm sorry, this troubles me. I'm a military veteran. I understand a chain of command, and the proper chain of command for something like this is to go to the county and discuss with the county about implementing this tax. You do not bypass the county. You would have the city manager discuss this with the county executive and the P&F committee for the county, and we would have that discussion, and we would bring that discussion in, and we would try to implement this as a county. You don't do an end around trying to come around it. I don't know if this is just inexperience or trying to get a separate tax for the city. Either way, that does not help the taxpayers. I'm a county representative, and I have city taxpayers contacting me about this, which is ridiculous. They shouldn't be contacting me about city issues. They should be contacting me about county issues. But everybody knows that the county sales tax is a county issue, and the city sales tax is a non-existent issue. If you're looking to accomplish creating a separate tax, then state that. Put it out there that way. Don't put it up here and say we're trying, and quote to media saying, well, if we get this, then we get all the tax money in the city of Oshkosh. That sounds like you're trying to go around us. We already have a strained relationship between this city and this county. When Manager Roloff left, the last thing he said to me was, thank you for being a representative for the city of Oshkosh. Because I stood up for the city of Oshkosh. When they get bashed by all these townships and by by Neenah, Menasha, all these other areas in the county, I'm the one who takes that heat. And I stand up for the city of Oshkosh. I'm proud to live here. I've lived on the south side of Oshkosh my entire life. And seeing something like this pop up on the NBC 26 news feed is absolutely ridiculous. Because the county should hear about this first. We're the ones who should discuss this first. This is our jurisdiction, not yours. And if you're just trying to send a statement, contact your representative. Do it behind the scenes. Don't freak the people out and say, hey, we're looking to add a city sales tax. Because the people are going to start saying, well, city sales tax, and what if the county does a sales tax now? Now we're going to have 1% extra sales tax because they're going to have half for the city, half for the county. People don't understand these ins and outs like all of us who represent the people do. So I would very firmly ask all of you to not have this go forward. Go through the proper chain of command. Have our new manager talk with our new county executive. I know they're off to a great start already. Because in my district, we have a fire station that needs to be replaced. And I've been working hard on that since before you were here, which some of these members know about. And I want to see the city and the county working together. I don't want to see us butting heads all the time and have people bad-mouthing us from the city council or people on the county board bad-mouthing the city council. I want to see us work together. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're elected to do. And it's really hard. I mean, yes, the sales tax, as you put it out there for the city, would benefit me. I live in the city. If that would all come off of my property tax, I would be really happy. But that's not the way it works. The proper chain of command needs to be followed, and I hope you all follow that proper chain of command. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no one else registered to speak on this topic, so we'll bring it to council. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this resolution forward, so I want to talk a little bit about it. I will talk first about what it is not. I see 4 reporters sitting in front of me. This is not a request to add a sales tax for the city of Oshkosh. That is not what this is. This is a request that the legislature will allow certain cities to levy a sales tax. There are 2 counties in Wisconsin that do not have a local sales tax. They're Winnebago County and Waukesha County. That is narrowly tailored in hopes that the legislature would be more agreeable to allowing the city of Oshkosh to be one of the cities that could levy a 0.5%. The other thing that the resolution does say is that second-class cities, which Oshkosh, Green Bay, Appleton are considered second-class cities according to the state of Wisconsin, that they be permitted generally to levy a 0.5% sales tax because we are regional hubs. People use our services and don't contribute to our services. You think about the town of Winneconne, or the town of Algoma, or Omro, or Black Wolf. I have friends in each of those areas, and they come and they use our libraries, and our parks, and our emergency services, and they don't contribute anything towards the levy. So what we do know as a city is that we have very limited options to actually raise revenue to pay for all of those services. And what we also know is that people don't want their property taxes to go up every single year. And so what we also know is that the state has not given us a ton of options and a ton of different, what I'm calling tools in our toolbox, to actually raise additional money. So what my resolution asks is not for a tax to be imposed on the people of Oshkosh today. What my resolution asks for is that the legislature will give Oshkosh the ability to chart our own destiny, to move Oshkosh forward in a way that allows us to raise revenue in a way that's not just increasing property taxes. And by the way, just talking about property taxes a little bit, landlords pass on property taxes to renters. It doesn't just affect property owners. The other thing a sales tax does is it does not tax gas or groceries or prescription medication. It's a way that the state of Wisconsin has said we're going to protect people with fixed incomes and our working class people when we actually do apply sales tax. So it is an option that I'm hoping that this council will request from the legislature. I appreciate the supervisor's comments. The county board and the city council are co-equal branches of government. We happen to operate in the same place, and I think we do have a good relationship. I think if the county wants to implement a sales tax, that is the county's purview. I completely agree with that representative. I think, and all I'm asking, is that Oshkosh be afforded the same opportunity. And so I am asking this council to ask our legislators, to ask our governor, to ask the League of Municipalities to serve that cities like Oshkosh, however it wants to define that, will be afforded the opportunity to implement a 0.5% sales tax. And then this council can do a ton of outreach and do a ton of math and say, is this good for the city of Oshkosh? Is this good for the people of Oshkosh? But we can't do that work until we have that option on the table. So I would encourage everyone to vote for this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember Nichols. Councilmember Larson, followed by Councilmember Flom.
This will come to no surprise to anybody up here because you've all heard me talk about this for a decade, whether I was here or not. Mr. Mayor, I thought back to the time that, was it 8 years ago, we were on an ad hoc committee for special assessments. Remember that? 9 years, something like that? This was a topic then because this was something we thought of as an option instead of a wheel tax, which was a good option at the time. It would have been only county at that point because Milwaukee had not yet set the precedent in the state of Wisconsin of being the first to be a municipal tax. So there's precedent set for this statewide. Different reasons in Milwaukee than we're asking for here. I can't say anything differently than Councilor Nichols said. I agree with all that. I won't get into all the finer points. I'm going to do it online. You're all going to read it anyway because that's what I do, and it's going to be lengthy and it's going to be fun. One thing I wanted to point out at this meeting, though, I've heard a couple people already say that things like this, if we were able to generate more revenue, we're just going to spend it on other stuff, not new stuff. It's not going to help your taxes, not going to make your life better. That is incorrect. DJ is correct when he says the impetus for this is, you've heard me say this before too, our tax rates in Oshkosh are too high. Our fees for services are too high. We're going to work on a budget. I know the new city manager is working on it. We're going to find cost savings in it because that is something that we have to do. We're beholden to you to do that. But without finding more revenue, the state's not being kind enough to us. And no offense to John, I understand everything you're saying with the county. This is not an end around, but the county's not being helpful to the citizens of Oshkosh either by being one of 2 in the state that does not have a county tax. Whether any of those funds ultimately go back to the citizens of Oshkosh or not, doesn't matter because we all pay county taxes and city taxes. So savings on the county level would be savings on the city level regardless. So I think this is fantastic. You couldn't have made my day any more, DJ, when you proposed it. This is something I've been asking for and begging for in a whole bunch of different ways for an awful long time, and I'm really happy to support it. So thank you.
Councilmember Flom.
Well, I'm just going to start and say that as somebody who used to serve on the county board, this sales tax discussion has gone back and forth for a number of years now. And looking at the math with property taxes and looking at how things are developing over the next few years, that a sales tax on the county level is probably inevitable, no matter how people may or may not like that. And with that, the concern that I have about this resolution is the timing. We just asked the state for more money on MSP. We just asked the state for more money on shared revenue. We're asking the state for a lot of things. So before we go ahead and ask the state for more funding on this level, which I understand the logic on all of it, if this is simply a messaging resolution, in my opinion, this can wait. I think it's important for us as a community to work with our county peers beforehand, and if that doesn't happen within the next 12 months or so, let's go ahead and fire this off. I think we should be talking to our representatives. I think a sales tax is an option in the future. But for now, I think the timing is off. I think the timing is incorrect, and so I will not be supporting this evening.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. There were just a couple of items brought up that I want to mention. It was brought up a couple times, so I think it's important. This is not a messaging resolution. I promise that I will never send a messaging resolution to this board. I think that's a waste of time. I think that that people of Oshkosh expect action from us, and so if I generate a resolution, it's because I am expecting action. I also don't think that we can ask too much of our state representatives. I would never tell someone in Oshkosh who sent me an email, hey, you've sent me too many. I'm not going to do it. I think that that's an important thing to note. I think that we should be going to our representatives in Madison, and we should say, hey, here's how we can do things differently. The other thing that was mentioned is that we're asking for money. We're not asking Madison for any money at all. We're asking to be able to chart our own destiny and have a sales tax that affects the people of Oshkosh only. So, no, this is not a messaging resolution. I do not think we're asking too much, and I'm not asking for any money from Madison. I think this resolution is sound. And I think it says to the people in Madison, our representatives in Madison, that we want to chart our own destiny, that we're not asking you for anything, except for the ability to implement things that are going to affect our own people. And if our own people don't like it, they can vote us out. That's what I would ask for.
Councilmember Larson, and then followed by Councilmember Bulow.
And Jacob, I have a little different take on that. I think the timing is great on this on account of MSP primarily, because we did a good job with messaging to get that out there. And it's great that everybody was so responsive to it and about it. It was a lot to learn that we were the third least receiving city in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that is one more reason why this is a justified action and a justified ask, because we need the money, frankly, more than other people because of the situation we're in with MSP still not being fully funded. So I think that's a reason to ask now. I also think we can talk about, we just approved not continuing EMS services for some of the same places that could be contributing more to the levy that we're paying for and they're not. So I think that makes this timely as well. So I think it's a good ask. It's certainly not performative, and I hope that we're all in favor of it, and I certainly hope that our representatives listen.
Councilmember Bulow.
Thank you. DJ said this very well, and I just want to pull out a couple items that he mentioned, that this resolution itself does not authorize a tax. It does not create a tax. It creates the ability, the ask for us to take a hard look and see if that's correct for us. If the county beats us to it and they decide that it's right for them to put the tax in, that's fantastic. But what we're looking for is another tool in our toolbox to make sure that we can present a balanced budget to our citizens without relying so heavily on property taxes. Everybody in Oshkosh felt the recent revaluation. I know it's a horrible word, I shouldn't say that up here, but it's just it made clear to us that we need to look at other funding options. The other thing that I'd like to make clear is this by no means is a check to, if we get the money, to be able to increase our spending. This is a way for us to be able to make sure that we can provide the services to our citizens, provide the staffing level that we need to be able to have those people that can provide those services. But this does not mean that we're going to go out and, go nuts and have more and more stuff or more and more services. It's so we can maintain the level that we do while controlling our levy. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and I know Mr. Mugrauer is in the same place because we have kids that play a lot of sports, is that when we travel to other counties, which we do often, we are contributing to their roads, their local economy, because we're paying for their local county sales tax. And when they come here, visitors are not. And so this also creates a more equitable environment. I'd love to see it at the county level, I'll be honest, but I don't represent the county. I'm not a county board executive. I represent the city of Oshkosh, and so that's why I'm going to vote yes for this.
You look like you might want to press your button.
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I agree with much of what has been set up here and at the stand. I do want to point out, John, I think, I very much agree. I think the timing on this is maybe not ideal, but I also very much think that the state does limit the city in and what we can do at all. I would even go so far as maybe this resolution doesn't have to be so much sales tax or something. I mean, the idea is that we need more tools to fund things, and it doesn't have to be property taxes all the time. Wisconsin, if you didn't know, is one of the top, it's either the top or in the top 3 at any given year for how much we rely on property taxes. Other states don't do it this way. They don't fund everything through property taxes. They fund through other fees, other taxes, sales taxes. That all being said, I do very much agree that if we were to ever move forward with anything like this, that it has to be associated with property tax offset. It has to be a way that's not increasing our budget. It's helping citizens offset in lower taxes. And then again, I do think we're giving this a lot of time. I got caught up by the news a little bit, and that maybe got conflated. This really is just an advisory resolution. It's this board trying to communicate with its elected officials at the state level, saying, hey, this might be a good idea, let's look into it. I wouldn't even call it a first step. I mean, this is really just a discussion at this point. Opens the door for that discussion. Again, John, I'm going to reiterate that maybe that could have been done at a different time. I'd love to work more with the county on how they're thinking of this and how we can move forward with them kind of hand in glove. So I agree with your sentiments that I think that maybe should have been our first stop, that maybe we should have talked with those folks a little bit, but it was a really good soundbite for the media to be able to say Oshkosh is raising taxes. But I digress. I do think that we need more tools in the tool belt is my long spiel.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. And I agree with everything Joe said. He mentioned that maybe this is too specific as to sales tax, and I'll tell you why. And that's the reason I pressed my button. The 7 of us, I believe all 7 of us were there, had a conversation with our state legislators. And one of the asks of the legislators when we send a resolution to them is to be specific. One of the legislators in particular said that we shouldn't send just our problems, we should send solutions as well. So the reason that this is so specific in giving Oshkosh the ability to do something, and then it's even more general if you go to the next section to say, well, also this could apply to more than just Oshkosh, really. The reason it's about sales tax and not just we want more tools is because our legislators, the people that represent us in Madison, asked for that. So you can bet that if we identify other ways that Madison can change the rules to help us chart our own destiny, I'll be bringing those resolutions as well.
Councilmember Spanbauer.
Thank you. As the newbie up here, I just want to get this on the record. These guys like to give me a hard time for not using my mic enough just yet. I agree with a lot of what has been said already. I think the fact of the matter is we need the option on the table. As it's been said, the state does not give us a lot of options. Want to be sympathetic to understanding that perhaps this could have been talked about slightly differently, so I want to acknowledge that. But I've learned a lot from the 6 people that I sit up here with, and in fact, even the other people that I sit up here with. And I think this is a group of individuals who are going to move through this process very mindfully and ensure that the citizens are heard, and that this will be done in a way that takes in enough feedback to make sure that this is properly enacted. Thanks.
Anybody else? I might be the only one who hasn't spoke yet.
I was trying to outlast you, but
Not a chance. Deputy Mayor, initial quick hit thoughts were, wasn't a fan that this jumped right to us, that we could have used one of our citizen bodies. As I got to thinking about it more and thinking more about the intent behind it, I understand the nuance between talking about this thing that we don't have and asking for even just permission to even discuss it. And that's what this really is. This is asking for permission for us to even discuss it, because it doesn't pay to waste any of our very precious, our time, staff time, citizen member, board's times on things that just aren't an option to even pursue. And I think I'll end up supporting this resolution. I think where it is for me is this is a conversation starter in terms of local control. And Madison enjoys taking away or restricting local control. They have for decades. And this is a time and a place for us to remind them that we know what's best for Oshkosh, because the people of Oshkosh put us here. And I think it was Councilmember Nichols, if the people of Oshkosh don't like our actions, they have a chance to say so at the ballot box. So I'll support this. I hope it's a conversation starter for us. I think Councilmember Nichols wants it to be more than that, and I appreciate the vigor on that a lot. But I think it's, for me, that's where it's at. It's actually a discussion on local control and where it could possibly go from there, because there are plenty of other possible outcomes. So. Anything else from council? Any other discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Could the news headline be Oshkosh passes conversation starter? Is that the next one that could? No? I'm getting a shaking head. No?
I saw all of them nod their heads, by the way.
Those four nodding heads.
Inside joke on that one. If there's nothing else on this resolution, City Clerk, will you take the roll on 25-393?
Spanbauer,
Aye.
Flom,
No.
Bulow,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Mughawar,
Aye.
carried 6-1.
Next up, Resolution 25-394, approved general development plan and specific implementation plan for an outdoor storage area at 3200 North Main Street, and Plan Commission recommends approval. I have no one registered to speak on this. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I see none. Please take the roll.
Spanbauer,
Aye.
Flom,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Nichols,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Mughawar,
Aye.
carried 7.
Resolution 25-395, this is to approve the city manager's goals for the 2025 and 2026 calendar year. I have no one registered to speak. I'll take a motion in a second, please.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? You have anything you want to say? You ran us through this process, or do you want me to
Sure.
not put you on the spot?
Yeah, no, I'll come up with something. So these are goals we've approved for the city manager, as it says in the title. This council, along with our staff, has really worked to try to refine where we want the city manager to be in the next few months, in the next year, and really what priorities that we're looking for. As you'll see, there's a lot in here that's about process changes. There's a lot of things that we want to see done a little differently at City Hall, and also other initiatives we have from the past that we want to move forward. Things like revitalizing our downtown. We touch a little bit on other housing issues and stuff like that as well. So I'm happy that this council went through this process. It was pretty painless. We met a handful of times just to discuss kind of where Rebecca is at, kind of the strengths and weaknesses our organization has. I really think that's an important part of this process, is to see where Oshkosh is lacking, but also to see where Oshkosh has strengths, and then to tailor our goals around those. And that's what you see before you. Again, I don't know if Rebecca has anything to add. She was kind enough to put the resolution together for me, so thank you.
I really don't have anything to add. I appreciated the conversations that we had putting it together, so thank you.
I will note that we tried to make these goals smart, to make sure there are timelines and really objective things that we can say this has been done or has not been done or is in progress. So I think in the past we've had some goals that were a little bit loftier, a couple come to mind, but these are really trying to be objective. So
Very good. Councilmember Flom.
I want to echo that these are actionable goals. These are goals that this council is committed to delivering to the city. These are long-standing issues, especially with our organizational structure, our efficiency, and our engagement with the community, and really fixing those sore points and recognizing where we can do better in the city and where we can move forward as a community to make this the best place possible to live, work, and play in the Fox Valley and in Wisconsin. So I'm very proud of these goals. I'm very proud to support this. I think the city manager has done a fantastic job so far. And I think this council is looking in the right direction for where we want to go as a city and as a community at large. So very happy to support this, and I'm eager to see the progress we make.
I want to thank Deputy Mayor for leading us through this process. That's one of the, besides having a pulse and being able to stand in when the mayor's not here, that's the other role, is to help lead us through annual and semi-annual. So I thought you handled the process well, and I appreciate the effort behind that. I think City Manager Grill, your first few months have been even better than we expected in terms of how fast you've hit the ground running here in this community. And these goals reflect a vision that I think collectively we share, that we believe we can move farther and faster. And these goals help us to achieve just that. One of the council members recently shared, I think, a brief comment with me that you are the right person at the right time for us, and these goals align with that, and can't wait to see what the future holds for us and for you as well, because your success will inevitably be this community's success. So that's all I have to say on that.
I have one more. I'll echo
Sure.
a little bit. I really do want to just highlight how quickly you have taken to the job. And I want to make sure citizens understand that as well, that there usually is a little bit of lag time when you hire a new employee, when you hire especially a person who manages an organization this large. Our conversations with Rebecca have been great, and in my estimation, she has really taken the job and hit it running. I mean, you are a lot farther ahead than I would have thought other managers were. So I just maybe want to give you a little bit of call out and say thank you. So.
Thank you. I don't know if you're trying to make me cry.
I just really want to hit home that you are doing you're doing a good job, and you're ahead. So yeah.
If there's no other comments, the city clerk will please take the roll on 25-395.
Spanbauer.
Aye.
Flom.
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Nichols.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
That wraps up our action items for this evening. We'll move into council discussion, direction of city manager, and future agenda items. First thing on the discussion and direction to city manager is potential changes to our fair housing ordinance. We have a number of individuals registered to speak to us on that topic this evening. We're going to start with Bill Van Lopik, and then we're going to follow that with Deb Martin. Bill, if you're here. Bill is next. Okay, Deb Martin, you're first up. Come on down, as they used to say on Price is Right. If we'll keep it to 5 minutes and the topic at hand. And then next up would also be Jennifer
Verderami.
There we go. That right there. Thanks.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing this up, and that we do take a look at this. I'm part of the Esther organization here in Oshkosh, looking at housing situation, and so this is near and dear to us. Many other people are going to speak with a lot more eloquence than me, but I just want to say that one of our friends that was on this committee with us, Christopher, passed away a month or so ago now. But his story really struck me hard, and I think it applies to this. Christopher served time in prison. When he was done with that time, he had to stay in prison 19 more months. 19 months, because there was no housing for him. Now, I understand people having to serve their time. If you do something wrong, that you pay your price. But why, and Christopher's not alone in this, why months and months and months, and again, at taxpayer expense, are we making people stay because there's no place to put them? So again, not to override anyone who's doing anything incorrect, we want to be stay within the law, but some of these rules are just harmful, and for no reason at all to someone who has already taken, been responsible for what he had done wrong, and why to continue to stay in prison. And he is not alone. It happens over and over again. So thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Jennifer, you'll be up next, and then followed by, who do we have? Katie Olson. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Jennifer Bertarami. I live in Winnebago County, but I work here in Oshkosh as a housing advocate. Tonight I'm speaking to you not just in my professional capacity, but as a person directly impacted by the issue before you this evening. I'm an active member of my community. I hold degrees in substance use disorder counseling, human services, and I'm nearing my completion of my degree in social work. I'm an engaged mother, a grandmother to 6 grandchildren, a good neighbor, a responsible tenant. I have an excellent credit score, no evictions, and very strong rental references. And yet it still took me 2 full years to get a lease in my own name. Why? I also have a criminal record. Because of a nearly 8-year-old criminal conviction, because of one box, a check box on a form that asked, do you have a criminal record, was enough to shut every door. That box removes one thing that's supposed to matter the most, human beings from the equation. It closes the door before you even knock. It shuts out relationships, it shuts out communication, it shuts out hope. In my case, I was lucky. I had a chance to send a letter directly to a landlord, explained that yes, I did have a conviction, and then I explained who I am today, what I've overcome, and why I would be a great tenant. And guess what? I am. I take care of my home, I pay my rent, and I look out for my neighbors. Once I had the chance to introduce myself and build a relationship, I was seen as a human being, not a checkbox. But had I not been allowed to communicate, to share my story, I'd still be searching. So tonight I'm asking you to support the ordinance that simply says you can't blanket ban someone from housing just because of their past. The language I'm advocating for comes directly from Dane County's ordinance and HUD's own federal guidelines. It's smart, it's fair, and it's legally sound. It allows landlords to consider criminal history, but it also requires that it be relevant, that it be recent, that it actually has something to do with their ability to be a good tenant and neighbor. To be clear, the ordinance change being introduced tonight does not ban background checks. It doesn't tell landlords who to rent to. It does not stop them from considering safety or ability to pay rent. What it does is simple and fair. It says you can't automatically deny someone housing just because they check that box. You can't shut people out without consideration. What this ordinance would do is stop the kind of blanket policy that's still legal today in Oshkosh, where landlords say, we don't rent to anyone with a criminal record. Full stop, no consideration, no context, no exceptions. Will it stop all discrimination? Maybe not, but it does remove a barrier. It lets people apply. It opens doors to communication, and that makes all the difference. People with criminal records already face enormous barriers, and yet we want safe, healthy communities. How can we expect people to rebuild their lives without a roof over their head? HUD is very clear on this. Over 100 million Americans have a criminal record. That's nearly 1 in 3 adults. Are we really saying none of them deserve a second chance? The irony here is that landlords benefit too. Someone with a record often has more to lose. We know how hard it is to get housing even without a criminal conviction. We often have much more to prove, we know what's at stake, and we value stability. We don't take housing for granted, we fight for it, we earn it, and we hold on to it. Denying people chance to show that, to be that, hurts all of us. We should not be denying people the basic human right to housing because something that may have happened 5, 10, or 25 years ago, especially when they've rebuilt their lives. Oshkosh has a housing crisis, as I'm sure you're all very well aware of. We don't have enough affordable units, and the ones we do have are often closed off to entire groups of people because of old, unrelated, or irrelevant criminal history. That's not housing policy, it's exclusion. This ordinance won't solve everything, but it will move us one step closer to being a community that says your past shouldn't sentence you to homelessness. People change. I'm living proof. I'm not here asking for special treatment. I'm asking for consideration, for fairness, for the right to be judged on who I am today, not who I was years ago. I urge you to please pass the change to this ordinance. Let's replace the checkbox with a conversation. Let's make sure people in Oshkosh are judged on who they are now, not who they were at their worst moment, not just shows up on a background report. Because in the end, this is no much more about more than just one individual. It's about building stronger communities, a community that includes everyone, based not on past mistakes, but on who they are today. Let's lead with fairness, dignity, and the belief that people deserve a chance. even second most. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Following Katie will be Tina Hafman.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Katie Olson, and I serve as the Executive Director and Lead Organizer of Esther, a faith-based social justice organization working across the Fox Valley to build more equitable, inclusive communities. I'm here tonight to express strong support for adding protections for people with arrest and conviction records to Oshkosh's Fair Housing Ordinance. Over 1/3 of U.S. adults have some form of criminal record. Many have long since served their time, but they still face housing discrimination that can follow them for life. Even a single arrest without a conviction can mean being denied housing, creating barriers not just for individuals, but for their families and their communities. This kind of discrimination increases homelessness, unemployment, and recidivism, and it all falls hardest on Black and brown residents due to well-documented racial disparities in the criminal legal system. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has made it clear blanket bans that deny housing based on criminal history, especially arrests or old unrelated convictions, can violate the Fair Housing Act when they have a discriminatory impact and aren't based on real safety concerns. So this is about fairness, about public safety, and about ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to rebuild and thrive. Oshkosh already expanded the protections in 2016 to include gender identity and expression. So now you have the chance to extend that leadership by protecting residents with arrest and conviction records as well. Communities across Wisconsin have already done this, including Dane County. So let's follow their example. People deserve second chances, and they deserve stable housing. And they deserve a future that isn't defined by their past. So on behalf of Esther, I urge you to support the amendment proposed by Councilman Larson.
Thank you. Ms. Hafman, and then followed by Wendy Stein, and then I think finally Leslie Bush.
Hi, my name is Tina Hafman. I live at 1307 Washington Avenue. I'm here as a member of Esther, but I also was a founder of Day by Day Shelter. And for 7 years, I've worked up at Levin, which is a financial crisis organization in Menasha Appleton that serves northern Winnebago County, Calumet, and Outagamie County, and who helped 4,500 households in 2024 with rent assistance. And then finally, I grew up with a landlord, and so I see that part of it too. I helped him, my brother and I helped him to collect rents, do all that kind of stuff. So I have kind of a lot of perspectives on him. I think the most important one is the one at Levin, because I talk to people every day that are in crisis because they are worried about being evicted or they can't find a place. And I don't know about other cities like Appleton. I don't know what their ordinances are or what landlords do, but I talk to a lot of parole officers. So I'm thinking that landlords up there must rent to some people with criminal records. I can't say anything as well as Jennifer and Katie did that isn't a repeat, so I don't want to waste your time with that. But I want to remind you that what Mr. Larson's asking for really is, we are all asking for, is consideration. We want some consideration. It's not a giant step, but it is a baby step that could possibly house many more people. People without dignity, people that have more and more chances taken away from them for a basic need, that doesn't lead to anything good. And so if you could think about that, maybe categorizing violations and convictions so that it's not a one-size-fits-all policy would be a more fair way to handle it. The crisis of unhoused people is getting bigger and bigger, and I know you all know that, and it's not just here, of course, it's everywhere. But this ask, which is to look closer at what is actually in a potential renter's record, is a doable concession that would get more people housed. That's a goal we all have. I support Mr. Larson's proposal. I hope you'll give it consideration. I know we can do better here. Thanks.
Thank you. Wendy Stein and then Leslie Bush.
Hi, I'm Wendy
Ma'am, if you could step closer to the microphone, it's hard for people in the back to hear as well as the people at home. Thank you.
And
All
people,
right, is that better? Okay.
Thank you.
So, let's do a little experiment together, all right? If you're comfortable with it, take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Rest your eyes. All right? Now, I'd like you to think about the one thing in your life that you're most ashamed of. You don't have to share it. We're not going to share it, but just bring that thing to mind. And sit with it and feel that within yourself, that thing. That thing that people probably don't know about you. It's a secret thing. All right? Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks for doing that. Now, I want you to imagine going through your day, carrying that thing around, that shameful thing that you did. And what if you had to answer questions to get services, to apply for housing, to get a job, and that thing always came up? You had to share that thing. It's constantly following you around. It wears on a person. Most people that spend time in our prisons and our jails are going to be returning to our communities. They're going to need housing. They've served for their time. They've paid their debt. They paid their debt during their incarceration. Yet upon their release, these people are still paying a price. I worked for the Department of Corrections for 20 years. The majority of the time I was a correctional officer. People are released every day from our state prisons, and they have nowhere to go. Those that have financial resources that could get a place are excluded due to restrictions on renting to people with a criminal record. I'm tired of living in a society that complains that people need to do better, and yet they're penalized when they're trying to make something of their lives. This is an old and tired narrative. Let's try to do something different that will benefit everyone. And I'd like to challenge you going forward. Think about whatever that thing, your thing, that you're ashamed of. And imagine going through your life, the next time you fill out a form, the next time you apply for something, think about how these barriers would impact you. Please consider passing ordinance 47A. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Leslie Bush. Welcome.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. I'm Leslie Bush. I live 531 Jackson. I've been a resident of Oshkosh for since 1987. And as one of my other associates with Esther has brought up with our friend Christopher Blake, I too was incarcerated, and upon my release, or so-called release, I too was held for an additional 6 weeks, and that additional 6 weeks, is nothing in comparison to the 19 months that Christopher endured. And I was very fortunate to have a friend to help me out and help me with a place to stay. Now, while I was in prison, towards the end, they have this program in there called reentry. And a lot of it is, you do legwork for finding housing, finding a job, so on and so forth. But it all comes down to this checking that box. Are you a convicted felon? Do you have a criminal record? And I don't know how many times, I've, because in the past, it was basically, yeah, you have to answer this question. Okay, so you answer it truthfully, and that's it. That's where it stops. And, it's really sad that landlords and places like businesses like Titan, who have several rental properties, if you have a criminal record, you might as well forget it. They're not going to rent it. And, like I said, it's very, very sad to see that happen. And right now, I'm doing well for myself. But, it wasn't easy. And I urge you to vote on the resolution Mr. Larson has brought upon this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to make sure, is there anyone else here that would like to speak to us on the topic? Okay. Well, Mr. Larson, I think you kicked us off on this journey. Maybe do you have interest in starting us off on the discussion here?
I would love to, thank you. I also can't speak to any of that as eloquently as some of the folks who spoke did. Thank you for all doing so. And I can keep it brief because they all did such a great job, which I know is a relief to all of you because you love when I keep it brief, right? I want to start by thanking staff and particularly Attorney Lawrenson for listening to me on this and for doing a great job explaining it, for taking it to Rebecca and getting us to this point. I'm really appreciative of that. And I think it probably makes sense for me to start with why I brought this up to them. I think, well, let me take a step back. In the pre-reading on the agenda, we got a really good understanding of what happens with the fair housing policy now, what's included in it, what happens if there's a complaint, where it goes, and that was really valuable because I didn't know that. This fits in great with that. The fact that there was precedent for that changing in 2016 was great also. So I think we can add this pretty easily. It's great to hear that there's support for it in the community at the very least. I did share with council the Dane County ordinance that was referenced. The verbiage in there is really simple. It explains what things are involved in this. It's charged with a crime or convicted of a crime, and that's about as simple as it is. The longer document that I supplied to council was the HUD. It's basically a definition of why criminal record falls into probably discriminatory action if you make it a blanket statement. HUD issued that guidance in 2016. I'll post that tomorrow so everybody who wants to read both those things can read them. But they make sense with everything we're talking about. This matters to me, and why I brought it up to Lynn to start with is, I think everybody up here knows, maybe at home you don't, I own a restaurant. I've been in the restaurant industry for 30 years. One of the things I like most about my industry is we provide jobs with flexibility to people who need flexibility. And sometimes that means you're in school. Sometimes it means you have a child at home and you need different things to work with. Oftentimes that means you've done something wrong in your life and this is how you're starting over. So I'm always pleased and proud to provide those jobs. And I get to know the people I work with and I get to like them a lot. So this is something that I experience every year in my life a couple times. So I know how hard it is firsthand, not as hard as you do, Jennifer, but I get it. I live through it with those folks and it's heartbreaking to watch. My wife and I have apartments, so we're oftentimes able to put people in those and that makes it really easy for us. Currently we don't, and that's why I brought this to Lynn. So I'm working with a friend who was recently incarcerated. They got out. It's a compounding issue here because they were incarcerated for most of their adult life, so they have no rental history and no credit history, essentially. So I'm involved in the process as a guarantor in that, and I'm happy to do so, but that means I'm making the first phone calls. And the first phone call I made on behalf of this person, I gave them a name, I gave them my name, told them they'd been in jail, and the answer was, we don't rent to anybody with a criminal record. I pressed on that and said, are you sure you can say that to me? And they said, word for word, in other cities where we operate, we can't, but in Oshkosh, we can. And that's when I emailed you, because I didn't think that sounded great. So I'm glad we can discuss it. The rest of it you all have covered for the most part. I mean, it's blanketly discriminatory if that's the statement up front, and that's a pretty easy ask to fix that part. It won't fix everything. It'll make it a little bit better going forward. Beyond that, this person, I think, did find an apartment, which is great. I'm not going to name names here. I might do it later. Point out the good ones who do help, because there are good ones who do help. The fourth time we heard no, I'm going to point out, for example, here, because there's one more ask that wasn't included in this. They said they had a policy on incarceration. It was anything more recent than 5 years, they're a no, but longer than that, they're a yes. And we said, great, this was longer than that. So we went through the entire process of applying, myself as guarantor and this person as tenant. Ultimately, we were denied. It cost $160 to do so. I should point out that all 4 of those units in the 5 weeks we worked on this project were not rented during that process to anybody else. They all sat vacant the entire time they could have been rented. And this last one had the great privilege of having another unit open up in the same building right after we were denied the first one. And I asked that landlord, should we start the process over? And they said, yeah, you can pay the fine, the application fee again and just start from scratch. So the rest of this ask, and what Madison does very well, is include on applications a checkbox. Different than the one we're talking about before. This checkbox says, would you like to know why you were approved or denied? Super simple ask, adds a little level of accountability to the process, and I think that's helpful as well. I do want to add, just to reiterate, this does not change background checks. Background checks with regard to who's safe or allowed to live in a place are totally allowed. Provisions of release are still allowed, of course, because those come with the time people have served. I just really think that if you've served your time, there's a judicial system that does this for folks, that landlords shouldn't then become judge and jury again to prevent people from getting what they need out of their life. So I hope there's consideration. That's as brief as I can make it. Thanks again for everybody for talking. And truly, Lynn, thank you for bringing it up, because I appreciate the way you put it forth.
Councilmember Buelow, followed by Deputy Mayor Stevenson.
I agreed that I would follow Councilmember Larson, because I wasn't sure he was going to be able to get through the whole thing with dry eyes, so great job so far.
Trying.
I would like to say that this is a no-brainer, but that would make it seem like I have not given it a lot of thought and consideration. I've given this thought and consideration for the last 14, 15 years since I truly found out what an issue and problem as it is. And as Deb has hinted to, and I'm just going to reiterate some of the points that have been made, but I'm going to try to do it eloquently and quickly. The criminal justice policies and practices have many flaws. And we have an agreement in this society that you do the crime, you do the time. But the agreement is not then that you do the time and then you're barred from housing and jobs and other ways to make your life better. In my previous employment, the number of persons that have had the ability to rent somewhere that were not allowed to was staggering. I'm going to share a story, unnamed of course, of a military vet. He was a formerly incarcerated person. He had an ongoing monthly income and $60,000 in his bank account. $60,000, more than I will ever have in my bank account likely. And he was not able to find a place to rent. He was utilizing an emergency homeless resource bed because he had no other place to stay and could not get an apartment. Other people here have brought up Christopher Blake, and I'm just going to mention some of the things because I know that Mr. Larson wouldn't be able to with dry eyes, like I said. This is a man that when I first met him, he had started a can collection with other people to go around and pick up aluminum cans to donate that money to people to use for down payments. He was spending his time and talent to go pick up trash and garbage to help other people because he had the experience of not being able to get an apartment. Later on, he had a budding and growing renovation business. He was talented, and by all accounts, he did amazing work. He was a man who spent time to get to know the persons, the humans, and treat them with humanity, the people that were unhoused in this community. So I apologize, Attorney Lawrence, that we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I emailed you. Is there permissibility in our ordinances to be able to name a resolution or an ordinance moving forward?
I mean, I think you can do that, how we would put it into the ordinance, I'd have to think about, but there's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
Okay. When this becomes a resolution or ordinance, with council's permission, I would like to name it after Mr. Blake.
Deputy Mayor, followed by Councilmember Flom.
I don't have a ton to say beyond that, and I kind of hesitate to even try to take your thunder at all, so thank you. Thank you to both. I guess overall, supportive of this ordinance. We do a very bad job in this country at, we do a very good job at incarcerating people, which is not a good thing. And again, we don't allow people to just, when they paid their time, we don't allow them to move on. I guess more question for staff on this end. We did talk a little bit about, would love removing that box from applications. I do have a little bit of consternation around when we talk about like sexual related crimes or violent crimes. I think the thing I heard was they're allowed to have a conversation. If someone were convicted of something like that, is the landlord allowed to have the ability to say no to some of those if there were instances where there was a child at the home or some instance that would require a little bit more nuance, I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay, this for tonight is discussion and direction, so I'm going to start with, I have not researched all of this because I need the direction from council to begin with. I can tell you, I know that there are specific provisions in Wisconsin law about sex offenders and landlord and tenant issues, but I'm not prepared to talk about them with any real authority other than I know that they're out there. If the direction from council is to move forward with this, that would be my next step, is really to dig into it. And as long as I'm on that, just so there's that expectation, I will dig into the questions, I will do the research. I may come back with more questions for you. It may take more than, like, don't expect something on the next council meeting necessarily, because I don't just take ordinances from another jurisdiction and say, all good, let's just find and replace with Oshkosh. And so we would dig into that, and we would, potentially come back to you if there's something that, we find in the law that we want to make sure we know what direction you want us to go with.
No, that's perfectly fair. If you need direction, yeah, I would give direction to move forward with this. Again, I feel strongly that we want to make sure we're not discriminatory in our practices, not kicking people out of housing. Again, our system is set up to make a lot of these folks fail, and it's really just, if it personally hits me a little bit closer to home than some of you may know, but I really feel like we need to give our folks a second chance. I really feel like we need to give our families a second chance. I'd like to get into a little bit more of that nuance on that. And also, I can't let a housing discussion pass without mentioning housing. You mentioned that affordability, we're in a housing crisis. Again, housing usually harms the people at the bottom of our society. Shit kind of rolls downhill, I think is the phrase. But this isn't a silver bullet. We still have work on that end. This is a measure to help us move forward a little bit, but again, I want to make sure we're keeping the goalpost of increasing housing supply, increasing affordability, because that is really where we're going to see massive changes. So this is, again, something I approve, but I think we have more work on all housing ends. So,
Councilmember Flom, followed by Councilmember Nichols.
Yeah, I really don't want to rehash some of the other points that the other council members made in a very eloquent manner. For me, if you have paid your debt to society, you have paid your debt to society, and you should not be denied housing. And for me, if we go through the relevant public safety checks, I'm sure everybody here on council is agreeable to those. To Councilmember Stevenson's points, I'm all in favor of staff researching that further. But for people who have, again, done their time, are reintegrating into society, housing is a critical component of that. And again, when we talk about housing, we talk about increasing accessibility, increasing supply, doing what we can to increase affordability. This is one of those cornerstones to me. I think everybody deserves a second chance, especially if they have done their time, and I think housing is a critical component of that. So I'm not going to be too long-winded about this. I know staff has some more research to do, but I think the ordinance that has been cited here is a very good starting point for us, and I would like to see us go in that direction.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. I'll just mention that thank you for Councilmember Larson for bringing this up. When it was brought up, I had no idea that the ban the box legislation that had the employment context had not hit the housing context, which is wild to me because Wisconsin is actually pretty tough compared to other states on the employment context as to whether or not you can deny someone a job if they have checked a box on their application. Actually, they don't allow you to have a box on their application at all in Wisconsin. The company I work for, some states that we operate in, allow that legislation or allow that box. And we've chosen to take it off ourselves because what we've learned is in the states where it is not allowed, it doesn't make any difference in the quality of person that we end up hiring. And that's because a conviction, a past conviction, does not have any bearing on who you are today. Nothing you do in the past has any bearing on who you are today. And I think that's the point. And so the fact that the legislature was able to see that in the employment context, but not the housing context, is kind of shocking to me. And so as we think about it, and the Dane County ordinance certainly is a great place to start, but I would ask that we follow the employment context as well. And we look at, is that box allowed on the application at all? I would hope that we can say no, it's not. And then in the background check that comes on the back end, what we can say, hopefully, is just what Wisconsin says in the employment context, is that it has to be relevant and it has to be recent. Oftentimes on the private side, I'll get a phone call saying, hey, we got this background check back. I work for a company that caters to children and families. You can imagine anything having to do with kids and a crime is a no-go for us. That makes a ton of sense. That's relevant. And you don't have a recency issue with there because it's just always so relevant. But sometimes they'll say, X happened. Someone had a drug conviction 35 years ago. Can we hire them? 35 years ago. That's the year I was born. That makes no sense, and I'm the one answering the question. So I would ask that we look at the employment context. I think it provides really good guidance. Certainly, let's look at Dane County and see what they do. But the employment context is what I know best, and it's really straightforward and easy in the state of Wisconsin. Thanks.
Councilmember Spanbar.
I want to thank everybody who came and spoke tonight. Really appreciate your comments and words. I also, it sounds like, want to agree with what everybody else up here said. I want to remove barriers to getting people into housing, especially when that includes arrest record and conviction record. So I really appreciated Councilmember Larson's information that he shared on this. To me, this was common sense. So.
Zero concerns with the content of and the intent behind the change. Two other parts. One, this is giving direction for staff to start creating something, a red line version, but we have a job to do as a council in terms of communicating this. And now, several of the council members up here happen to be landlords. Let's put it out there, make sure it's very clear. In terms of tenant and landlord relations and landlord associations, making sure that we are communicating and attempting to communicate and work with those associations that are local, because we need to make sure that we're fostering a positive working relationship with them. Doesn't mean that anyone in particular is dictating where we're going and how we're getting there, but making sure that we are communicating is an important part for me if we're making any updates to this. I guess nuanced questions of, Madison, to my knowledge, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be, Madison's the only one that's currently using this as a protected class. Am I correct? I'm just looking at Councilmember Larson because
Milwaukee has a whole division that does it as well, but they separate it out from the city, so it's a whole equal rights protection agency that goes with it. So they apply it from a different direction, but it's the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I think it's Dane County.
Yes.
Sorry, Dane County. I shouldn't have said Madison.
And HUD guidance was the same.
Yep.
Yes. And the only reason I bring up that up is because what many may not know, we know it because we do this thing. We contract with the Metro Milwaukee Fair Housing Coalition to handle any complaints, and just to make sure that that process is already set up, that they have a mechanism, they have a comfort factor in handling these types of issues. and I know that was noted in the memo, but I just want to make sure it was publicly stated, because we do outsource that grievance process. The other part, though, in terms of giving direction to staff, I think council's been very, very clear on, would like staff to move forward with updating our ordinance to include what Mr. Larson has put forward in terms of the information that he had shared in advance, but there was an additional checking of a box type thing regarding why you were denied. That wasn't shared in advance. That hasn't, nobody commented on that in any way. And I want to make sure we're giving clear direction, and Councilmember Larson's requests are also heard. So in terms of that, I would like to hear other comments, or if there's direction given. I can poll individually on both, but I also, if you guys can talk it out, we'll hear it from you too. So Councilmember Nichols, looks like you'd want to go.
Well, I guess I have a question. I mean, if you apply for a background check, you get to see, you can appeal portions of your background check in the employment context. Is that not true in the housing context?
No. You rarely get to see them in the housing context.
So that's crazy to me. Again, I would ask that we model it on the employment side and say specifically, you have a right to appeal, because there are times, and this does happen on the employment side, where there's a conviction listed for someone and it's not true. It didn't happen. They have the same name as somebody who was convicted of something a while ago, and they were never convicted of, and they will appeal. We use a third-party provider. They'll appeal to that third party and they'll take it off, and then we'll get the new report and we'll end up hiring that person that we almost didn't hire. So I think that is a good idea, and I'm surprised that that mechanism doesn't exist today. I don't know why we would hire someone to do jobs, especially jobs, think about jobs involving public safety. I don't know why we would have different criteria for those people that is more flexible and more transparent than we do having an apartment.
Councilmember Buelow, then followed by Mr. Larson.
How it looks and how it gets sussed out, I'll leave to the attorneys, but yes, I'd love to have something that says I want to know why I was denied, or have that ability to appeal.
Councilmember Larson.
Agreed, and I won't belabor the point. It doesn't need to be there for this for me, but I think it's a valuable mechanism because it is that first step. And in the case I just referenced to you, the problem with the fourth one that we applied for was they just said they chose a better tenant. That was the only answer, and that's sometimes not a good enough answer. It needs to be better than that.
Councilmember Floman, then I'll ask a question, I think.
For me, I think people have a right to know. It's very simple for me. And kind of moving off of the employment case, I think that's a good start as well. If you are denied from housing, you may have your idea of why you were rejected off of an application, but somebody else may have a different idea as well, and the facts may be different on the ground. So I think people do, and that's fine with me on that front.
I think my question is going to sit around, and maybe this is just staff through doing the due diligence. I'm looking at Ms. Lawrence, as I say staff, but Ms. Lawrence and her team in conjunction with community development, probably, because some of this is some community development stuff, but is that ask even legal, or is it even enforceable? And I don't want to have that, I don't need to have the discussion now, but I think maybe as you're going through the process and as you ask questions or report back to us, that's probably something that would be worth us hearing it, but I'm not even sure us saying we want that is even an enforceable thing, but.
And just to kind of caveat that, if it's not enforceable, if it's not legal, if by law we can't do that, we shouldn't break the law. But in all good faith.
That's usually what I tell you.
Yes, yeah.
That's usually what we pay for the sound legal advice there. Don't break the law. But what I was getting towards is, it's not that I'm disagreeing with it. Is it even practical for us to even make that a demand or an ask in any process? So, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I had similar questions, and this is just all a roundabout way of we need to do our due diligence. Is it legal? And then also, I guess, if we have a box like that, person checks it, who's going to say, who's going to go to that landlord and say, okay, now hand over your information? If that's Milwaukee's housing, we contract, if they do that, just more on how that would work in practice, because it's well enough to put it on there, but if we can't actually if we don't have an enforcement branch, it's going to be difficult. I thought I had another thing. I think your click threw me off, but No, I'm just, I'll be done.
Councilmember Flom.
I just would like to, I guess, follow up with, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, right, when staff is looking at this. So whether or not we can enforce certain things, whether or not we can't, I want to be reasonable in that regard. I don't want to, put us in a situation where we're trying to be transparent, but, the reality is we've made processes tougher for people as a result. So as long as we can find that median ground, for me, that's where I would like to go. So, yeah.
I'll do my poll since I'm not allowed to do nodding heads. I have to remind you guys of that.
Every time.
If I phrase it in such a way that says to give staff direction to proceed with updating the fair housing ordinance as we've discussed tonight, is that ambiguous and yet specific enough to allow them some marching orders in terms of how they report back to us?
Just a question on the naming idea that I had. Do you want to include that? Is that something later on?
As discussed. It was discussed and we will have, I suspect.
I have a note on it.
I suspect we may get a memo or something on this before we even maybe see an ordinance update. It just seems like it's maybe practical. And then we can always have it on a future discussion before you even, spend time writing too much, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go right down the line, Mr. Spanbauer.
Yes.
Mr. Flom.
Yep.
Mr. Buelow.
Yes, 100 times.
Stevenson.
Yep.
Nichols.
Yep.
And Mr. Larson.
Yes, and thanks for the conversation. Appreciate it.
You have direction to proceed on that one.
Thank you.
Next up, direction to staff. We're going to do a couple of these. Direction to staff regarding draft policy for undergrounding utilities during reconstruction projects. I am getting the sense that Mr. Robbie is walking up here without even looking up. Come on up.
I'm just here to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Larson, go first. Yeah.
I'll start. It's real simple. This is way better than what we have, which is not much of anything, and I appreciate that we have it. So I think it's great. Thank you. Please proceed.
Mr. Nichols, followed by Mr. Flom.
Thanks. I'm hoping that you can just refresh my memory, because I should have gone back to watch the video of the workshop, but I didn't. I know we talked about these arteries into the city. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think we had always also talked about the wider boulevards that have kind of the center landscaped areas where we could underground power just because there was more space. Am I remembering that correctly?
Are you referring to?
Sawyer Street is an example where.
Okay, so Sawyer with the boulevard rather than the terrace, because people call the terraces boulevard, so I want to make sure I understand
Yes,
what
the
you're
boulevard in
asking.
the middle of the street.
I don't remember how much we talked about that. I do know that may certainly be a challenge to get the utility companies, because they are going to say, no, you got to get us an easement on the backside of the right-of-way for that. That's been the communication we've gotten from the utility companies all throughout our research process with this.
But is that different than the arterial? Ones? I mean, they're going to require an easement there on the back.
They're going to require that there as well. It's just the phrasing in the draft that is before you is arterials are going to kind of automatically warrant doing a lot more looking at it, because those are the gateways. And in particular, the gateways that I identified in the draft are ones that we're just automatically going to do a lot more research on those because of the importance of getting into the city. So that was kind of some of the hierarchy, identifying those gateways, arterials, collectors, and local streets. There may be certain barriers that would kick some streets out before others, but some of those more important streets, I wanted to bypass some of those barriers and maybe see if there aren't some other alternatives. I know at the workshop we talked about 9th Avenue. I believe 9th Avenue is going to have too many barriers, but there are other options I think that we can make it look better.
That's helpful. I think my request would be that we would add those wider boulevards to this. I know that we talked a lot about resilience in that, and so it's not just the fact that it's pretty. I think my comment was, I don't care what it looks like. I want everything to be more resilient. I do care what it looks like, of course, that's as we're sitting up here and on a workshop. But that would be my ask, is if there's the space, because my understanding was that the space is really one of the most difficult parts to undergrounding utilities. If these boulevards allow additional space and it's something that we can do when we actually reconstruct a street, that would be my request.
Councilmember Flom.
I would just, for gateway corridors, for me, I think it's a good place to start. looking at streets where we can do this easily, right? Starting with gateway corridors and then going with streets with wider setbacks. Sawyer is a good example. And just kind of creating a overall framework, which I think this does, for us to begin tackling the issue. Resiliency is one of the biggest factors for me in this as well. Just given the fact that we do get some wild weather here, both in the winter and in the summer. It's the season where we get thunderstorms, and those can be pretty destructive, especially with trees and limbs blown down. I think this is critically important for us to do. One of the only things I would also add is grant opportunities, where we can work with the state DOT, potentially the federal DOT, in looking for opportunities for us to probably share some of the cost in this, because this is a very expensive proposition. So I want to get this done. I think it will pay for itself in the long run, but if there's any opportunity where we can share the costs, I'd like to see where we can realize those. So thank you.
Mr. Buelow.
It's helpful that I got to sit with you at our team building workshop, so I get to say those three little words that I know you love to hear. Yes, no notes.
Anybody else before I? Okay. Good intent. I think it's gonna be a real challenge, and I'm fine with creating a policy that says we should be doing this, or we should be looking at this more often. The benefits, there are benefits. Improving safety, improving aesthetics, yes, especially on our gateways, how we try to welcome folks into this community. That is an important thing. The resiliency we have within our infrastructure, all good things. But by doing it, this is inevitably going to increase the cost to our property owners. And I struggle a little bit only because we have been taking actions recently to try to reduce the impact of special assessments and reduce the impact of road construction projects financially on our property owners. And this, potentially, goes against that a bit. Still, this is not a hard and fast that you must do. This is a consider it more, and that's why I'm completely fine with proceeding with creating this policy. But I struggle with that this is going to at some point increase the cost to a property owner in some fashion, because utilities will not be picking up those costs. These are going to be things that are going to be burdened on those property owners at some point. So this isn't something where it's just magically going to happen and not be, nobody's going to pay for it. Somebody's paying for it. So just a consideration as we even considering, we've got another topic, the next one, right? The special assessment deferrals. So it's, consider those things anytime we're talking about adding on to projects or enhancing things. Somebody's paying for it somewhere, and that's just a consideration of mine as I was reading through this and as I'm hearing this. Mr. Nichols, and then Deputy Mayor.
If I may, quick, I'm sorry. And that is one of the things that I think I tried to point out, is the fact that, the policy would establish guidelines for reviewing it. Obviously, as we present those projects to the council at that time during our CIP process, that would be the time that those discussions that you're just pointing out would have to occur.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Mr. Nichols, and the Deputy Mayor.
I absolutely agree with the mayor. And I think that what this policy does is gives us the ability to consider what the costs are and what the value is. And so we may be presented with Sawyer Street, and I'm going to throw that in one more time. We may be presented with Sawyer Street, and we can ask the question, how many homes are going to be affected by that? And then if one power line went down on Sawyer Street, how many people would lose all of the meat in their freezer? And so, yes, there may be an immediate higher cost impact. Certainly, it's going to be cheaper today than it is 10 years from now, and that's what we talk about anything. But if we can have a real conversation at the time the CIP is being discussed of, is this going to be better because of the length of the street and the number of properties affected in the long run, I think that we can balance that. So I agree with you. I think this policy gives us more facts, and there's nothing wrong with more facts.
Deputy Mayor, followed by Mr. Spanbar.
Those were my comments. Yeah, I agree. I think this just makes us take a look at it I'm glad we're taking a look at it. I like the way the policy is written right now. If in the future, I think we're all, at least the folks that are up here, are at least a little cost-minded. We've tried to make it, as you pointed out, make an effort to make things a little bit more cost-effective in Oshkosh. But anyway, if prices were to come back on a road that were just astronomical and we knew that citizens were going to have to pay a ton for that, I would assume that we would say no on it. But I do like pretty things. I don't just like resiliency. But I think that this is a good step in the right direction, and just giving it our roads the look that they deserve is a good thing.
Mr. Spinbar, followed by Mr. Flom.
As I mentioned already, these guys are always faster with their buttons than I am. So I agree with a lot of what has already been said. I just want to call out a couple things. Mr. Mayor, definitely hear you on increasing costs. But I think with anything, we're going to pay for it now or going to pay for it later. Something I say a lot in my line of work is, when was the last time your electric bill went down? I also appreciate the inclusion of and the acknowledgement by everybody up here on resiliency. If you were watching the Sustainability Advisory Board meeting last night, which I know everybody does, we discussed having a future conversation about community resiliency. One thing I, like to also ask folks in my line of work is, what would you do when the grid goes down, when the power goes out? I think, our cost upfront, and thinking about, as Councilmember Nichols already said, what happens when everybody has to throw away everything in their fridge, right? Or throw away everything because of loss of power. Another important question to consider in considering community resiliency is, what is the cost of inaction? Thank you.
Mr. Flom.
Yeah, just a note on the cost front. This is why we review the CIP. This is why we have conversations about why projects make sense or why they may not. We recently had one about that on Bay Street and the sidewalk. So this council is not locking itself in to a very expensive infrastructure plan. I think it's actually quite the opposite. We're looking for facts. And so that's why I support this, and that's why I think it's, if to do these where they're appropriate, I'm all for it. So that's where I stand on this, and I think it's just important to touch on the fact that that's why ultimately council has discretion on this at the end of the day.
Okay. In terms of giving guidance to staff, I know Councilmember Nichols would like the inclusion of either specifically boulevards. And maybe it's not even just calling that out specifically, but maybe it's other streets where it just makes sense. And then maybe that's too
Wide streets is kind of where I was going, and that's why I said boulevard, but I don't know how to define wide street.
But just,
is there a definition of footage for wide street?
Street gauge.
We don't need to get too specific, but
I was trying to give the engineer a number.
Yeah.
Because that's how I like it, things.
And maybe it's just as specific as, at this point at least, including boulevards or streets that are similar into that guidance. With council, okay with giving that guidance? I see nodding heads down there. You're not supposed to do that.
Yes.
Spinbar?
Yes.
Sloan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
You've got guidance. One of these times I'm going to...
You got guidance.
You're going to do the nodding heads.
Like an easy button.
One of these, I'm just going to say all in favor.
Should be really handy.
Mr. Robbie, do you have what you need from us on this particular topic?
I believe so, yes.
Going to stick around for the next one, too?
And the one after that.
Sounds good. Direction to staff regarding draft policy for special assessment deferrals.
Okay for now, but I may think of
This was something I know a previous council had asked for. I'm thankful it's making its way to us. I appreciate the effort on this one.
Yeah,
You seem like you want to start.
I will start by saying I appreciate your patience with me while I had to digest a lot of different things to try to get this to where it is at right now. Certainly, as you mentioned, previous council and previous council member had sent us a lot of information from different communities. It did take a lot of time to try to sort through that to figure out how some of those ideas might work for our community.
Mr. Larson beat out Mr. Flom. Go right ahead, Mr. Larson.
I can start on this one. James, I'll echo what Matt said. Really thankful that we're still talking about this. I followed along before we got here with it. It was a good idea then. It's a good idea now, and I'm really grateful for the work you put into it. I have a couple of questions only, and they might be no for reasons I just don't know, but having read this a couple times, is there an option? I get the 5, 10, 15-year option. I like the 4 provisions about when those things kick in, if a property is sold, if the title transfers, those kinds of things. Is there an option for that to be not 5, 10, or 15 years? Can it be just those last 4 options, or is that too big an ask to everybody else who lives here? Because I think that was part of your initial intent. Not for every case that this comes up, but this comes up with regard to annexations to some degree now, and we're living through some of that currently. So I know that the best answer for those folks who are living through that would be that they pay that when they sell the property. But if that's too big an ask, and if getting to 15 years is the middle ground, I'm all for that too.
Well, I think the 5, 10, and 15 are the various payment plans that are available to the property owners. The deferral, as far as the interest-free deferral capped out at 10 years, at which point in time you did need to make a selection on those plans. And at that point, it really becomes, how long are we going to try to keep track of this on the books and, avoid it getting lost in the process. So that is one of the struggles that we tried to balance. And certainly the split, the sale, the things that affect the title, those go through a process of checking already. So that's why those made a lot of sense. And when you're doing those things, those are the times that these types of charges are supposed to get taken care of. But putting that end of the interest-free part of it at 10 years was really, it was a balancing act between trying to recognize the impact to these property owners, but also trying to recognize the impact to everybody else in the community for carrying those costs, and trying to be as equitable as possible to everybody.
Perfect, and that's a good answer. That's why I was asking, and I'm totally great with that. So that's wonderful. I have one more question, if you'll allow me. The very last portion of this, we are at current limiting this only to residential properties, not rental, not businesses, and not, only single family, right?
Yes, that was the intent, and that was, again, going back to a lot of the information that we were reading from other communities. That's what we were seeing in other communities that we're doing things, is we are trying to help the residents.
Great, and I understand that. My personal preference, and this may not be everybody's appetite up here, and I get that, my personal preference would be to use this as a tool for development as well, because I think that's a valuable tool. I think we could probably afford it, and I think driving development with this as a way to do so will be helpful as well. So I'd love to see it apply to businesses as well and to subdivisions. I mean, as much as we can use deferment as a tool for more development, I'd be all for it. I know that's not this exactly.
Right, and in many cases, the subdivisions don't have to extend utilities to get there. Some of the things, as you look at our recent history, there was a subdivision that was planning to come in a little further west on 9th Avenue. We extended the utilities under a public contract so that, that wasn't a cost the developer had to try to deal with. So in a lot of cases, the developments, especially the subdivisions, they're not having to extend to get there. They're just having to do what's in their development. And I think that is still a reasonable ask of those developers to pay for what's in their development.
I get that entirely, and again, it might be only me, but I'd like to see us be able to take that next step if we can afford to do so, because I'd rather see those developments happen in Oshkosh than in surrounding communities, and I think this can be used as a tool to do that.
Mr. Flom, followed by Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, I would say, the chief concern that I've always had with this, and let me preface this by saying that I do want to explore this, and I do think that this is a good tool in our toolbox to try to offset some of the costs about assessments. The vehicle registration fee hasn't solved everything for the people watching at home, and you still have to pay assessments for sewer and water laterals and driveway aprons and a number of other things. However, this is a policy to remedy that. The only concern that I have is, again, when we go back to that balance test of the city finances and the cost borne by other taxpayers versus the people who are having these deferred. I understand that this is something that will really help with affordability and development. I want to continue in that direction. The thing for me is I want to take a look at what the numbers are and how stressful this would be on the city's budget, especially as most of these projects are done via borrowing, via bonding. So for that, looking at the 5, 10, 15-year plan, I understand that, and looking at kind of the other options that we have, properties sold, title transfers. The only concern that I have is how much stress we're putting on the budget, like I mentioned. So for you, I'm just going to ask you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, where are you most comfortable with this?
Honestly, I think the stress, as you put it, on the city's finances, this is mostly going to apply in those developing rural areas where sewer and water are being extended. Because as you mentioned, the vehicle registration fee is already paying for the street reconstruction costs. So we are left primarily just with utility costs as far as special assessments go. Utility laterals, those are not overly expensive. Okay. Generally $3,000 to $6,000 to get those installed. Sure. Whereas, as you may recall, the cost for installing the mains, can be tens of thousands of dollars for properties, depending on how large they are. So I see this primarily only impacting those developing rural areas, kind of on the outskirts of the city where we need to extend utilities mains to service properties that don't already have it. Or in the case of, like the recent attachments from the town of Algoma where utilities were previously extended, and now that those properties are in the city, they have those connection charges due. So those are the only locations where I really see this being necessary to be utilized.
Okay, and that's very good to know, because I want to get to yes on this. I do. I want to give property owners more flexibility. I want to stimulate development. I want to make sure that people have that peace of mind knowing that this is not going to be a massive bill that's coming up on their docket that they may or may not have asked for. So I want to get to yes on this. How we get there, I would like to see what the rest of the council thinks. However, for me, I would like to make sure that the sale and title transfers are included in there where possible, because it creates an affordability option for, say, people on fixed income who may not be able to afford a big bill at a given time. So that's where I'm at. I really appreciate your work on this, and I want to make this happen. Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols.
Thank you. I love this. I'm at yes, so I'll start there. I guess I have a question. Well, first I'll say I agree with Councilmember Larson that I'd like to figure out a way to leverage this for development. I think that and I don't know if we can do this, but if you're encumbering a property for 10 years after they purchase it for these connections, if that's just part of the sale, if it's a deed restriction as part of these new developments, that might make the home cheaper for the home buyer on day one. I think that should be separate from here. So I think we move forward with this and we figure out the other piece, but I like the way that conversation was going. My question about this is, we have a 10-year deferral, interest-free, makes a ton of sense, and then you select a payment plan, makes a ton of sense. Can we provide the option to make payments interest-free during those first 10 years?
I'm going to look to our finance director to try and help me answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, I missed part of the question.
During the initial 10-year period that's interest-free, can we provide the option for the homeowner to make payments during those 10 years interest-free before the payment plan actually kicks in, where the interest starts accruing and compounding, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Great, love that. I would love to add that to the policy.
Mr. Bulow, followed by Mr. Stevenson.
Policy as written and everything that you've explained so far, yes, no notes.
Mr. Stevenson. Yeah, Mr. Stevenson.
I know I don't want to steal your thunder, Matt, but you'll maybe go over a couple of things, but I think there's maybe some other avenues we can explore here. I like the deferment policy. I like being able to do that. And again, I'll point to the mayor on maybe a couple other levers that we may be able to pull that doesn't require us to do that. But I wanted to chime in on Councilmember Larson's development point of view. I know I've expressed this a handful of times that I am in favor of deferrals for new subdivisions. I do think it's a tool that we can be more competitive than our neighbors to get more housing here. Again, how that looks, I don't think belongs in this policy. I think that's a completely separate discussion. And how that functions too. I mean, I think that requires thorough debate with us and also probably an idea of how much debt we'd be willing to take on and how that would look on our overall budget as well. But in concept, I'm supportive of if we can make Oshkosh the place to develop. I know that's not on the agenda necessarily, but I wanted to comment, so.
Looks like it is me. Anybody, you good? Sounds good. No, I appreciate all the staff time on this, and I know it's not always easy to, especially on this one, to try to make 7 people happy. It's not, as well as thousands of possibly residents too. So the options on page 3 that you kind of laid out, all good options. I like the ability to have have that deferral period for the new utility installation. That's a positive thing. I think Mr. Robbie touched on it. Some of these parts though are going to impact so few properties. So we're going to continue to spend a bit of time on something that actually is going to, very few people are going to use certain parts of this. Very few property owners. I, for one, would be in favor of extending this not just to owner occupied, but to either having a discussion on all residential property or all property. And we have recently put in using the safe water drinking loans, excuse me, I'm saying it incorrectly, for the lead service line replacement loan program we have, that's not just owner occupied. That is also open to other, to landlords, to rental property. So it wouldn't be a first time that we did something that had implications for more than just owner occupied. I don't know what the appetite is for that, but I think expanding that may be beneficial. I would be very interested in having a discussion on the development, new development one. Definitely not the time and place for that one right now, but if that's something council wants to discuss, we should discuss that in the future. And I'll leave all my comments on that for the future. Because I think we could go, I could go on a little bit on that one. A question or two, and then I'm going to keep going. Annexations, in terms of future planned annexations or boundary agreements, anything like that into the future. The impetus for this happened to come off of 2 projects, really 9th Avenue Extension and Clairville. Those are the last 2 that were very large, very impactful to new residents to Oshkosh. We don't have many, if any, like planned annexations 10, 20, 30, 40 years out at this point in time, do we?
The only scheduled one that is left is Zone D from the town of Algoma, which is the entirety of the rest of the town that is not within the protected area, and that is in 2043.
Okay.
But we do have, we do have other areas, one that came before council last year was Meadowbrook and Linden Oaks. Again.
Those were voluntary attachments, right? Or no?
No,
those weren't.
Those were not voluntary attachments, but again, they were still on on-site septic and wells, and we were getting some requests from the area for municipal utilities, and we are getting those again from some of those properties. But that was one of the concerns is hey, this is a high dollar amount. My systems are still working, so that is where the portions of the policy where as long as you're not using, you're not connected, not using, you're eligible for that deferral. That would be another case where it would impact those property owners as well.
Sure. And another discussion, since I talked about annexations, strategically that may be something we should be looking at or discussing in terms of any possibilities or what the future could hold for Oshkosh in expansion into the future. In my time, we've never discussed any of that. It's just been whatever happened 20, 30, 40 years ago in terms of, because it's all well planned out in advance. So not for here, but maybe into the future.
Yeah, I think most of our surrounding townships we have agreements with the exception of the town of Oshkosh.
Sure. One I did have was kind of touched on, but how do we ensure that we don't forget this? So if we're going to defer something for 10, 15, 20, 25 years potentially, we can't forget it. So sometimes this is just an in-house thing that we track. You know, is there abilities to actually put a lien on the property, you know, file one, so that way if something were to happen with that property, that we are protected. The taxpayers, the ratepayers are protected into the future, because staff will change in that time period, and so will processes, and hopefully at some point we'll get rid of antiquated spreadsheets and go to, you know, other things that alert us. So that was a long-winded question, I'm sorry.
I mean, from the finance perspective, I, in my previous life, have had that issue where it was spreadsheets and no one knew what the spreadsheets meant, and I had a problem trying to find the documents from 30 years ago to explain what was the deferral, when the deferral expired, and why no one followed up when it was supposed to have come due within 10 years and it didn't. Right now, it would be tracked through the Munis ERP software through the city. So the fact that it's in the software should be helpful in that situation, but like you said, 20, 30 years from now, we will probably most likely not be using Munis. As for putting an actual lien on the property, I was going to defer to legal.
Haven't looked at it.
Okay, and that's okay, but questions that I think are worthy of at least some thought and some discussion, and making sure that there's protections in place. I feel confident saying that they've probably been missed before, and it shouldn't happen again, but it's just the way it works, unfortunately. James, back to Mr. Robbie, back to a question or two. So in the potential options, I think it's bullet point 4, it's kind of the subsection 1. So you can defer up to 10 years as long as you're not connected to the city utilities. Upon connection, you've got to either then decide to pay full and avail yourself of the options.
One of the plans, yes.
But back earlier in the policy, 20-8 C1 and C2, if there's a main available, you're required to connect. So would we also be updating the current policy to reflect that?
That would be one of the things that we would, you know, if you would like us to go down the road of implementing this policy with, as long as you're not connected, you know, you're able to do that deferral, then that section of the code would need to be updated as well.
Just wanted to make sure.
And that is one of the things, you know, previous community development director and I had talked about having that included as a part of the review process that was ongoing. As I have talked to interim director Rakowski, that is not taking place as a part of their review right now. So, but that is something that, you know, if that's a direction you want to go, we can look at updating that section of the code.
Okay. So that's good for me for this part. This is a Band-Aid to the real problem, and some of that resides with our own policies and our practices. I appreciate you noting, you know, the state PSC requires that current or existing utility ratepayers, they can't pay for new expansions on there. That basically anybody adding has to buy into the system. That's basically the way they put that. But we then choose, but the PSC doesn't regulate sewer, and they don't regulate stormwater. We fully regulate that one. But we choose to apply that same logic to the other utilities. You're going to try and cut me off, but wait 1 second, because you probably got a good answer in here. Part of this can come at that, it also is time to look at those utility policies and how we decide what we're going to charge our residents for those utility improvements, not just adding to the system, annexations, for example, you know, the 9th Ave, the Clarevilles, but even potentially within our construction projects, our rehab projects, kind of going back to how do we reduce the costs from these projects to our residents, to our property owners. So I think there's maybe a bigger policy discussion on updating those to reflect current times, and maybe that was the right thing to do at some point in the past, but we're at a point where maybe that's not the right thing for us to continue doing in terms of how much we're telling people they have to pay as part of these projects. I know that's a lot there, but
No,
it goes into that how much we're going to ask them to defer. If we don't have to charge them to begin with, they don't have to defer it.
Right, no, I get that. Certainly, I don't know all of the whys as far as, why we chose to follow the PSC policy for the other utilities, but I have a pretty good idea why. The PSC has appeal authority over those other utilities. So if somebody were to appeal a decision that we had for, say, sewer utility, that appeal would be to the Public Service Commission. So that is a good reason to make sure you're following their policies for those other utilities, because you're less likely to have a negative impact from that appeal from their decision.
And like I said, I knew you'd probably have a good answer. Doesn't mean I agree with it going forward, but a takeaway for potential future, because coming out of this, I think there's also, it may be the vehicle registration fee and what it's applying to right now, and there are some cases where there might be some nuances of things that should be covered from that currently aren't, not for today, but I think it's an overall the CIP process and how we're specially assessing our folks, what we're specially assessing them for. I think it may be a bit broader, or there may be some other parts to this that we should be discussing, because if we can pass block on it at the front end, then we don't even have to ask them to defer it on the back end. So I'll stop now. Mr. Nichols has patiently been waiting, and that was the longest statement I think I've probably ever made up here.
I have a couple of thoughts. I think you made really good points, and so I have a couple of thoughts. First, I would love to look into what we can outsource in terms of the deferral piece. I think that having a third party manage this and inform us and collect for us might be an avenue that's worth pursuing here, especially if we start thinking about, we have multiple departments involved, if we're putting liens on houses and how we navigate that. So I think that's something to consider. And secondly, and this feeds right into that, I'd make the suggestion that once this policy is updated and drafted, that the Long Range Finance Committee look at it and then make the recommendation to council. From there, I think we can look at the other policies that you're talking about, Mr. Mayor, and what the interplay might be, as well as who is actually facilitating managing those payment plans. I think that having public input there might be better than the seven of us up here talking about it, and then making that recommendation.
Personally, I like the idea of including Lauren and Finance in some more of those discussions. So, any other council feedback discussion on this one, or I'm going to try to phrase something for us to give some direction. All right. So moving forward with direction to staff, unless somebody tells me I'm wrong. So page 3, staff has outlined several bullet points. It's really 5 and then a couple subs. That we proceed with all of those bullet points with the addition of making sure we're calling out the ability to make payments during the deferral period, that it's built into the policy, as well as a 20-year option, so go 5, 10, 15, and 20.
From a repayment plan?
Yes, the payment plan part, 5, 10, 15, and 20. Any concerns with what I've laid out? If not, Mr. Spanbauer?
Yes.
Flom?
Yes.
Bueller?
Yes.
Stevenson? Nichols?
Yes.
And
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
Wilson? Sounds good.
You only get one.
Yeah, you only get one yes.
That was 8 yeses.
Not 2. Okay. Comfortable with direction given at this point?
Yes.
Clear enough? Okay, thank you. One more. Direction city staff regarding Municipal Code Chapter 14. This is post-construction stormwater management ordinance updates. Mr. Robbie.
Yes, as council may recall, we had a workshop on this in April, I believe it was. Since that time, engineering division staff have taken this before the Sustainability Advisory Board for a recommendation to council, as well as the Plan Commission for a recommendation to council. And as I think I expected, those recommendations are different. So certainly before our staff and our consultant staff spend a bunch of time writing things, we wanted to make sure we were moving in the direction that you wanted us to move in, so that we didn't have to redo some things if we brought you something you didn't like.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yeah, so I, full disclosure, wasn't at the workshop. I did go back and watch all of it. I guess, high level, what I read or what I was getting from that is the DNR really isn't requiring these right now. It really is just we have to show improvement. Is that, am I correct?
Our latest permit for the stormwater program is overdue from the DNR, so we're operating under, I will say, the assumption that they are going to do something similar to what they've done with other TMDL implementations. And that is, yes, they are requiring municipalities to show improvement from permit term to permit term. We do not know how long they will be giving us. Past TMDL implementations in the permits have given 10 permit terms, which is 50 years.
And then, so our kind of assumptions around the scenarios were like degrees that we feel like they would accept. So like, I guess what I'm trying to allude to is, what if we improved very marginally, extremely small compared to the scenarios we've been left out? Would the DNR come back and say, you're not improving enough? Or just maybe a little background on, I know it's hard to predict what the DNR will do.
Yes, I don't know what they're going to say.
Sure.
In all honesty, we have not had those types of discussions with them because we're still waiting for the permit, which was due, I think, about 2 years ago.
Sure.
So it is kind of difficult to gauge. The one thing I will add is the reductions that were included in some of the scenarios, especially, I believe, I'm trying to remember were they numbered or lettered, but the third and the fifth scenarios are really trying to mirror from the total phosphorus reduction what best management practices are getting when they're achieving that level of total suspended solids control that is already required.
Sure. Yeah, and that's, I guess, another, when we were looking at, I believe it's our watersheds, I mean, it was Sawyer Creek watershed that was really kind of the issue, right? That was the outlier.
Sawyer Creek was an outlier from a total suspended solids side of things. From a total phosphorus, our requirements are the same across the city. And certainly, as we talked about, during the workshop and, during our other conversations, the TMDL requirement is exceedingly high. There is no technology currently readily available that can meet that. Some of our other communities around us that have implemented updated performance standards have gone right to the TMDL requirement, knowing full well that every single development that comes in will not be able to meet it, so they have to review it from a maximum extent practicable. From our staff standpoint and our discussions as we had them with other departments, is we felt it was more, I'll say, proper to put a target out there that is achievable.
Sure.
And really, that's why we went with something that matched with what best management practices or stormwater management practices, as they're referred to now, are already achieving when you're meeting those total suspended solids reductions.
Sure. I guess overall, this worries me a little bit. I mean, we just had a really long conversation about how we have a lack of housing. This will directly hinder that. It'll directly hinder us being able to build new homes, new housing for people. Also, being a resident of the central city, I think this in particular maybe hits your smaller lots a little bit harder than others. If it's again, DNR kind of does what the DNR is going to do. If it's a mandate that they're passing down, we have to do something. I particularly liked scenario 3 because it did really kind of highlight that the Sawyer Creek area is the one that's doing the worst. I guess my other final question, I'll put it there. I think we briefly talked about Appleton in this, and it kind of sounds like Appleton is just saying like, yeah, these are fictional numbers, but we're going to give exceptions for everyone. And I don't want to maybe that sounds like poor practice, but I also don't want to put Oshkosh in a position where we're being the rule follower and then developers are leaving us because Appleton is now saying, you don't have to follow rules, it's just an arbitrary number. I guess, can you speak a little bit to like, how are they using that exception, or how have we done it, or?
In the administrative code and in the permits, it's referred to as maximum extent practicable, or MEP. So to set your target at what you know is an unachievable target, every single site is going to have a claim of MEP, which means from a review standpoint, you need to spend a lot more time reviewing to make sure that they have actually done what they could do. You know, there are limits to what you can do. By setting a lower standard, I believe we're saying that, you know, we haven't set such an outrageous standard that you can't meet it. You know, we've set targets that you can meet. We also have the maximum extent practicable in our ordinance already. So even if they can't hit what our target is because of whatever reason on a site, that is still available. It's just we're saying we're setting a reachable or reasonable target, so you don't have to try to make a case and justify a case for MEP for every single development.
Sure.
Because that takes more staff time, but it also takes more time and money on the developer's side to present that case and make sure that you can prove it.
That's all I have.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I was at the workshop. I'll echo all the same concerns. Joe, you brought up a few of them. The DNR guidelines here still strike me as vague. The fact that we don't know if this is next year or 50 years from now is just frightening to me. I don't quite understand it. So for me, it's the same things I said. I mean, we have the highest stormwater rates in the state currently. As much as I like the ecological side of this, I am desperately worried that we make this harder for development and we deter people from doing work here by doing things like this. So I don't want to make it any more expensive. I know that current code isn't an option here, but that's where I would be, at least until we start looking at what the rates are and how we can reduce the rates. I cannot advocate for making them more expensive for developers. I just can't.
And I think one thing too, anything that, you know, anything that's not, you know, accounted for from a development standpoint will be paid for by rate. So not doing anything might have the opposite effect of what you're trying to do, and it might drive rates higher.
That's my concern. Until we know what it is, the mights really scare me. So we're making the landscape less attractive to people who want to build things, which is what we want, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm hopeful that there's good evidence as to what will happen at some point in time, and we can say with certainty that we need to do this or that, but I just don't find it currently. I just can't.
Mr. Nichols and then Mr. Bulow.
Thank you. I guess just first a question and then a comment, because I think I know the answer to the question. You're looking for which scenario we should move forward with as part of this. So we can talk all we want, but you're wanting.
I'm looking for some direction on how we should move forward, yes.
Yeah. So my answer is scenario 5. That's what was recommended by staff. That's what was recommended by the Plan Commission. I know it deviates from Sustainability Committee, but those numbers are close in terms of what they call for. What I liked, I learned a lot in this workshop. I'll say that. This isn't a world that I'm in at all, and so I asked a lot of probably very stupid questions. But what I liked a lot about the presentation is we looked at actual developments in Oshkosh and which scenarios are already meeting those criteria. Scenario 5 almost completely meets the criteria as the developments that exist today, which I think is a good sign, to your point, Chris, that we want to make sure we're encouraging development and we're making attainable goals, but we also are making progress in terms of what the DNR is requiring of us. So I think scenario 5 checks that box, and we can always modify it in the future if the DNR requires or if we decide to change that ourselves.
Mr. Bulow, followed by Mr. Flom.
Thank you. At Plan Commission, we recommend scenario 5 with a slight alteration for the total phosphorus reduction. And part of that was a nod to the sustainability advisory group that got to go first and recommended scenario 1, so they had a more restrictive requirement for that because they chose number 1, so we kind of met them part way. I am fine absolutely with scenario 5 or scenario 5 as recommended by the Plan Commission with the slight increase there. What we talked about a lot was we want a place that can be developed, but we don't want to make the restrictions so hard that every single thing has to be an exception. That's what we didn't want to create. So we really looked heavily into what would be met by each of the different plans. So I'll be supporting scenario 5 as staff recommends.
Mr. Flom, then Mr. Spanbar.
You're going to get me on a whole rant about why I'm so frustrated that state agencies are as transparent as a brick. But in regards to this, you're looking for something. In a perfect world, I would not want to move until DNR moves, but that could be by the time I'm retired, so I'm not sure. So looking at this, I like what the Planning Commission has, kind of a scenario 5 plus. I very much worry about adding to development costs. I worry about raising rates, but also I understand at the same time, if we do nothing, rates are probably going to go up anyway. So for me, I'm in the 5 plus boat. I think that probably makes some more sense based off of what we're looking at. I also was not at this particular workshop, but I was able to review the materials. And I really appreciate the work that your department's put into this. I'm not going to belabor this point. The larger conversations that we could have about DNR transparency and the ability for us to get back to us is a whole separate conversation that I could take a lot of time with. However, with this in tow, I'm good with 5 plus, so thank you.
Mr. Spanbar.
Thank you. I serve as the council liaison to the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I know we had a lot of discussion that night and went back and forth quite a bit. So as other council members have pointed out, I think the numbers aren't that different between them, and I think looking at staff's recommendation in conjunction with Plan Commission's recommendation, I would support the Plan Commission, so scenario 5 with the slight increase for the TPN redevelopment.
City Manager Grill, you and I had a brief conversation.
Yes.
Would you mind reflecting back on that maybe a little bit? So we chatted about the recommendations that are made to us. There's also,
Yeah.
and I think staff may not be necessarily
Completely aligned?
completely aligned on the recommendation. I guess talk a little bit about maybe just about that, but really it's the why behind it. Because I think council members have spoken about the certain parts, right? This is a stormwater thing, right? This is an environmental thing, but that has a direct impact on community development. And so trying to make these decisions in silos, it gets the impacts aren't always seen.
Yeah. One of the other items that was going to be on the council meeting tonight had to do with the parkland dedication, which also relates to economic development and housing needs. And I don't know what goal it is, but one of the goals that I have has to do with economic development, and staff is going to be very instrumental in helping on this. And we talked about the need for really looking at how we're going to be impacting people who are going to develop here. And so, I don't know all the details. I haven't spent as much time as James and his staff looking at this, but I think, to me, when we were going through this, scenario 3 was a good compromise, but it's not what the, advisory committees had approved. But there also, sometimes people are looking at it more narrowly. I'm trying to look at it from a more broad
And that's
view.
you're exactly right. In the past, we've had some spirited discussions on the purpose of our boards and commissions. They're supposed to look at things in a silo, in a vacuum of only their purview. They're not supposed to look at, sustainability is not supposed to look at the community development side of this. They're supposed to make a recommendation based upon what they know and what they feel is best, and Planning Commission should do the same. And then it gets here, and then that's where we're then, along with your professional guidance, supposed to then try to make the best call, the best play for us. I actually don't know that I'm in a position at this moment to give a recommendation. And I think for me, it'd be premature for me to say 3 or 5 or any of them, honestly. And I know this has been, we had the workshop back in April. So it's been, 10 weeks, whatever it is. My thought actually at this moment would be to pause just for a moment or two, maybe another meeting or two, and be able to ask some more questions to learn a little bit more before giving guidance. I think we have to be careful about making a decision on one thing that could have a potentially very big impact on our development efforts. And it's not that this isn't something we should consider, but we have to make sure it's in line with what is our vision, and are we trying to reduce costs, or are we trying to increase costs to development here? Just something to think about. Anybody want to rebut that, or go right ahead, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I would very much agree. I would like to pause right now and take a look a little bit more into this. Again, the scenario 3 was, I think, the least amount of change, and that was the one that I thought was a little bit more palatable to me. I completely understand the sustainability side of this thing. I drive an electric car. I'm very sustainability minded, but I do think that these regulations, the dollars and the cost put into the amount of sustainability or that you're going to get out of it, really, these are astronomically expensive projects, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And I think there are far better ways to achieve sustainable goals than to do this. I know that's maybe not your purview, James. You're more looking at the engineering side of things, and we need you there. We need you giving us guidance from what the DNR is handing down to us. So I don't want to discount that at all either. I just really would like to look at how this is going to affect our development community. And I would also be remiss to not say that we are the bottom of many of our watersheds. A lot of these sins are not our own. They are coming from adjacent towns. They are coming from, a lot of times, farm fields are one of the worst polluters of our water. But the state is really good at regulating cities. We take the brunt of being able to treat that water when you could probably have far reduced cost, far more impact if you regulated people outside of our urban area. So that's a little bit of a soapbox that I might be on, but I'll get off.
Careful with the term soapbox around here. It's a little late in the evening, sorry. I'm always a comedian, aren't I? Mr. Larson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you're saying the same thing I was, but just much better. That's why I would like to just stay where we are for the time being until we know more about it. I just cannot make a decision based on what's in front of us, because there's too many unknowns for it.
Mr. Flom?
That allays a lot of my concerns about, where the DNR may be headed, may not be, or it may not be headed. If we have more time, I'm in no rush to make this decision. You asked for a recommendation, I gave you one, but I'm in no rush to make it, so. Yeah.
Mr. Spanbar?
Always in favor of more time and taking a look at this, trying to just gather more information. I do want to point out a couple of things that other members have already noted. I hear a lot of conversation and talking points being said about, other communities having more friendly development policy or something like that, where they're not pushing those costs onto developers in the same way. We're not those other communities. We're positioned very uniquely, right? We are Oshkosh on the water. We talked a lot tonight about resiliency and wanting to have good, clean water, I think, is a great attribute of our community, and something that is going to, I hope, continue to pull people here. And so I think this is very much tethered to that. I think we need to strike a good balance of figuring out a way to ensure that we're doing what we can based on our position, as Councilmember Stevenson pointed out, in the watershed. Unfortunately, we're right at the crux of it. We're right at the crux of the river and the lake. That's maybe a double-edged sword if you want to kind of look at it in this scenario. This is something that I do, James, as you know, I do work in a lot. I do the MS4 reporting for the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, and work very closely with you and your staff on making sure that's all kind of done properly and in accordance with WDNR. So perfectly fine. Let's have more conversation on this. I just want us to continue to be as mindful as we can, and strike a good balance between ensuring water quality, resilience for our community, but still not hindering development. Thanks.
Council, how about we give anybody opposed to deferring this to the next regularly scheduled council meeting, which happens to be August the 12th, since we're not meeting later in July, it's 1 month. Any opposition to deferring action or direction on this one to that meeting?
Do you think we'll have any more and better information by then? This strikes me as something that's not coming soon. I mean, not that I don't want to talk about it again in a month, but I don't know that 20, 50 years from now is.
I think there is an action point that Public Works would. There's some grant
That may
funding.
give me some time to review, maybe not what the DNR is going to require of us, but what we need to get done and when. Because there are some things, as Mayor mentioned, there certainly are some grant timelines that are tied to the project, but there also may be some other things that are going to require us to do something, even though we don't know what the end game of the department is. So that'll give me a little bit more time to look into that with staff.
Additionally allows us to ask more questions if we have them, and give staff the appropriate time to respond. And if we get to first meeting in August and we need a little more time, that's still an option. But at least that deadline also still spurs action for not only us, but for staff too, to make sure that we're prepared to give proper guidance.
And I would certainly encourage you to ask questions.
Yeah. Mr. Robbie touched on it, but I just want to ask directly, like, you don't have a concern with us kicking this out a month? Like, that doesn't put you in any kind of bind, does it?
I think we can cope with that. Certainly, I believe the grant deadline is the end of the year, but certainly, if we can make a decision in August, I believe that will give us enough time to do that. And as I mentioned, that'll give us some more time to see what our deadlines and timeframes really are, and get more information back to you on that, because I unfortunately don't have all that off the top of my head tonight.
Okay. So we'll see this at the 8/12 meeting under council discussion. Hopefully the next few things will go along a little quick. Usually we take a break at 8, and I blew right past that, so I apologize to city staff that has to sit up here and doesn't have the ability to leave the room if they needed to. Future agenda items, meetings, workshops. We have a workshop planned at the August 12th meeting at 5 p.m. This is regarding the Washington Housing Development. We also have one the following meeting, August the 26th, at 5 p.m. regarding the matrix development process and code analysis review. Councilmember announcements and statements. Any from anybody? Doesn't look like anything. We do have a gentleman who's been patiently waiting all evening.
Had no idea what he was getting into.
That wanted to, I believe, give maybe an update on the Learning Collaborative, the ARPA grant, before city manager takes her part. William Kitts, come on down. Welcome.
Hi. He was supposed to write my name with his name.
Oh, sorry. And William and Leah Kitts. Thank you.
Leah Kitts. So we sent a report of where we are at a year to all of you yesterday, and wanted to again express in person how much we appreciated it and what an impact it's been making now and I think into the future. Bill's going to say a few words, and then, Dr. Kitts. And then I mentioned to a parent today that we were going to just say thank you to the council, and she asked me to say a few words, so I'll wrap it up with that.
And I'll try and get us actually speak into it. First of all, thank you for this. And just a little by way of background, I just wanted to say that basically over the last 40 years, I've taught at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh with Project Success. And that was a program for students with dyslexia. It was really a pioneering program. And so I got to use a lot of what we now call science of reading way back then, because the science isn't new. And it gave me a chance to see those students, hear their stories. They graduated, and I've kept in touch with quite a few of them. And it's rewarding to see them out doing the things that they can do. And I'm also proud to say that 4 of those students, out of the many, many I've worked with, are also happen to be on our board of directors. And also, just one other thing, my background, I did teach elementary school in Beloit. And unfortunately, I didn't know these things. And I was a terrible teacher as I think back on it, because I didn't know these things. Now I do. And so what really the grant has helped to do is work with students on an individualized basis, be able to test them, find out their strengths, find out what they need, put that all together. And with our combination of working with this, it's really been very rewarding. And I really think we've helped people, and we want to help more people in the future. So I'll turn it back over to the boss, and she'll finish up.
So it's been kind of fun to see him come out of the university setting that's been helping a lot of people, hundreds of, maybe thousands of people over the many years that he's been there, and be able to offer this service to the community. And that's been really thanks to the ARPA grant. So that's why we're just so enthusiastic and wanted to say it. So as I said, I mentioned to a parent, she asked me to say this too. I was so worried about my kids last year. They weren't making progress in their reading. No one at any point had said the word dyslexia to me. The school was recommending that I hold them back a grade, but they didn't have a plan to do anything different. Finally, a friend of mine suggested that they might have dyslexia, which I had never heard of. Through a chance connection of someone who knew Dr. Kitts, I learned last year that a new organization was being developed that might help my kids. They have been receiving tutoring there, and their confidence has increased so much, as well as my own stress. Well, she didn't mean her stress was increasing. Her stress was getting better. I want to thank the Oshkosh Common Council for providing the support needed for the Learning Collaborative to provide this important service. So thank you.
No, thank you. For myself, I think maybe for council too, but I want to thank you for the update. We don't get those very often, and even especially with the ARPA stuff, that was a welcome surprise. So thank you for updating us on the use of those funds and the effectiveness. And I still can't think of a better way to use ARPA-related things coming out of COVID. I had elementary-aged kids that went through that at home, and the number of friends and families who struggled with those things, with the learning environment, and our children are still trying to play catch-up from those years. And these types of things, this initiative is helping address that.
We can help people at any age.
Yes, you can. And I know, but just for me, that was having those elementary-age kids go through that, and then seeing the impacts of trying to learn from home. It definitely set children back, and if they're set back then, it's really hard to catch up. So, thank you.
And pictures of Hasty the Turtle are always welcome too.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking it out tonight as well. You were troopers. Ms. Grill, anything? I know you have 2 items on there, but anything you wanted to share?
Unless there's any questions about the ARPA award updates, I don't have anything more to share. And then the outstanding issues, I think we've been talking about them for quite some time tonight.
Well noted. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.